1. The hardness of the floor woke me up. It seemed like I had been laid directly on the sandy ground in the semi-darkness. I thought it might be evening, but then I remembered that this world had no more nights. I sat up and looked around. I seemed to be in a little abandoned factory. All of the windows were covered with sun-blocking curtains, and the light that did come in through the gaps between them sparkled as it reflected off the dust motes in the air. On the other side of that darkness, I could see countless shapes. Squinting, I realized it was a clutter of musical instruments. A bunch of guitars and basses, a drum set, wind instruments like trumpets and trombones. They were all just carelessly strewn across the floor. And in the center, as if under being protected by the other instruments, was a big grand piano. "What is this place?" I couldn't help but murmur. "An instrument graveyard." The answer came out of the darkness so suddenly, I thought my heart would stop. I hadn't realized anyone was there, not in the slightest. I turned to the corner the voice had come from. Partially buried beneath a mountain of random instruments, sitting there as if he were one of them, a young man was staring at me. 2. It's been a year since this world received the declaration of the end. I don't know the details of why, but supposedly this world will be destroyed tomorrow. I'm just an ordinary guy, so I don't know how it'll be done, but I don't really feel like finding out, either. Of course, no one believed it at first when we were suddenly told one day, the world's going to end. Everyone just laughed it off as an absurd prediction. But more and more abnormalities kept occurring around the world, and no one, not the government, not the TV, not the newspapers, took back the declaration. So now people all around the world believe it. The world must really be ending. Up until a few months ago, there were terrorist attacks and riots in Japan, too, but everything had calmed down. Probably people realized that there was no point. Some people sought out connection with humans and either moved to the city or returned to the country, while others ended their own lives in despair. And of course, there were many people who got caught up in the disturbances and died. There were almost no people left in this town anymore, so as a result, it was maintaining some degree of peace. I only saved that woman on a whim. On one of my long wanders around the mostly deserted city, I found her collapsed along the main road. At first I thought it was a mannequin someone had trashed, because I hadn't seen a living, breathing human in days. Before that day I definitely would have ignored her. But maybe the reason I acted on that whim was so I could do something nice on the last day. She stood up and picked her way toward me through the instruments. The stale air in the warehouse wavered with her movements. What day is it? It's the morning of the last day of the world. When I said that, she put a hand to her chest and exhaled deeply. "Oh? So this isn't heaven, then. Did you want to die? If so, I guess I messed up. No, it's not that." Just then there was a squeaky little noise. It was her stomach. Maybe she had collapsed because she was so hungry she couldn't move anymore. She seemed embarrassed and held her stomach, blushing. "Thank you for rescuing me." She bowed deeply. She seems to have her act together, I thought. Her parents must have taught her well. In which case, I wondered what she was doing wandering around this area alone. But I immediately cut off that line of thought. Had her parents died? Or abandoned her? Or was she wandering around in search of a place to die? Either way, it wouldn't be a fun story to hear. In a world that was ending tomorrow, there wasn't much that could surprise me. Did you get hungry out there? Yes. Well, I haven't eaten in 2 days. If you want some food, it's on those shelves. Are you sure? There's no point in leaving it there. I don't know where you were trying to go, but you can take as much as you want. But she seemed to be thinking and didn't move. What are you? What are you doing here? Why bother asking that? I was just curious. About the instruments. She twirled around and spread her arms. I sighed quietly and shook my head. You don't need to know. Plus, what's the point of introducing more assaults? I'm just doing what I feel like. She didn't react in particular to what I said, but just kept looking at me. It felt weirdly uncomfortable, like she could see straight into my head. Maybe I should just kick her out. Just as I was thinking that, she said, "Can I stay here a little longer?" "Why? I just feel like it." "Are you some kind of idiot with low crisis awareness? Or do you live under such a big rock that it hasn't even occurred to you? What would you do if I attacked you? If you were going to do that, why would you go out of your way to save me? Plus, weren't you just saying the same thing?" I just figured I would do what I felt like, too. She looked at me without a shred of suspicion. Her eyes were so pure it was hard to feel like shouting her down. The reply I ended up squeezing out was, "Then, do whatever you want. Thank you. I'm going out." "Okay. Be careful." I left the warehouse as if fleeing her words. Why is it so uncomfortable there just because she happens to be around? And how come I can't just kick her out if that's how I feel? Those were the things on my mind as I drove. 3. After the noise of the car receded, silence descended on the warehouse. The stagnant air made it feel like even time had stopped. My slightest movement caused us to swirl, reminding me that the world wasn't yet over. There was food on the shelves in the corner as he had said. There was way more than a single person would be able to eat. Had he collected it? I chose something I thought I might be able to eat, a ready-made pouch of tomato soup. "Father, I'm grateful for your blessings as I receive this food. Even if I were being generous, I couldn't call the cold soup good." But with each sip, I felt more welling up in my body. Our daily bread really keeps us alive. I took my time and finished it slowly. Even after I cleaned up, there was no sign of the guy returning. The clock on the wall said it was 10 a.m. Since the sun never went down, my sense of time had grown vague. If the clock were wrong, I would have no way of knowing. I thought for a moment and then opened the warehouse's curtains and windows. I worried the men might get mad at me, but I felt bad for the instruments left in the stale, dusty space. And I also had just said I would do what I felt like. If I didn't take this chance, I wouldn't even have time to regret it. I could hear leaves rustling against each other outside the window. A gentle breeze made the curtains sway. It was already December, but it felt like a peaceful spring day. I looked around the warehouse at each individual instrument. The random pile included everything from pretty serious ones that looked expensive to children's toy versions with anime characters on them. Was this a music shop's warehouse before? Regardless, this filthy environment wasn't good for the instruments. In the center of the warehouse was the big grand piano, like a symbol of the whole place, and leaning against it was what looked like a vintage acoustic guitar. When I strummed the guitar's strings, they gently hummed pretty tones. I sat at the grand piano and opened the keyboard. "Oh yeah, this feeling," I thought. Then I almost felt like I might start laughing. I thought I would never play again. Yet on the last day of the world, here I was sitting in front of a piano. It really must have been fate. Laying my hands on the keys, I took a deep breath. I had played piano ever since I was a little kid, and yet it had been forever since I'd last touched one. Can I even play anymore? I shook my head to clear out the thought that popped up in one corner of my mind. I'm sure I'll be fine. My body still remembers the music. When I tensed my fingers as I steeled my resolve, the sound that echoed out was far lower than I had imagined. 4. When I cleared the bump in the road, I heard a clank from the back seat and turned around. This area's asphalt was started to look all busted up like the rest. Once maintenance people go, everything degrades at an unbelievable pace. There was a mess of instruments stacked in the light van's backseat. I'd found them all in nearby houses and shops. It had been 3 months since I started gathering instruments in that warehouse. I must have picked up every instrument in town. Today I hardly got anything. I invaded other people's territory and made off with their instruments. In the world the way it was before, this would have gotten me arrested ages ago, but now there was no one left to complain. It made me think that without laws to manage them, our minds might degenerate just as fast as matter left untended. The band's stereo was tuned to a staticky AM radio station playing classical music. The commercial radio stations had long since ceased operating, but a few weeks ago, I started getting signals for some reason. I suppose someone must have snuck into a radio studio and was broadcasting on their own. The piece playing was Dvorak's From the New World. It was a famous symphony even someone like me who didn't know much about classical music had heard before. It seemed like an appropriate soundtrack for our final day. "What are you doing here?" I had been thinking about the girl's question all day long. What in the world was I doing here? No matter how much I pondered, I didn't know the answer, either. I vaguely remember the day I moved into the warehouse. I was all alone and looking for a place to die. In the course of my wanderings, I came upon that warehouse, and when I found the grand piano sitting in that space, equally alone, I decided to collect instruments. I wasn't sure if there was any significance to my actions, but the very last moment, at least, I had decided what I would do. The sun never set anymore, so I seemed liable to forget, but it was already evening. I didn't know what time the world was going to end, but we probably didn't have much time left. It hadn't rained in so long that the ground was bone dry and even the slightest breeze was enough to make an exaggerated cloud of dust. There was no one left in this town except for me. This place had died one step ahead of the world's end. The world's final day. My plan was to burn all the instruments in the warehouse along with myself. That was why I had been collecting instruments. The radio that had been playing classical music suddenly emitted a human voice. This is the last day of this broadcast, brought to you by my own interests. It was a short run, but thank you for being here with me to the end. I hope we can meet again someday. Well, goodbye. Backing the slightly older man's voice was Hondo's Hallelujah chorus. That's ironic, I thought. There isn't any God in this world. Tomorrow we learn that, whether we want to or not. So I can't stop praying. Before I realized it, I was outside the warehouse. I parallel parked in front of the entrance. When I cut the engine, the chorus vanished so coldly, without even the slightest echo. Has that girl gone off somewhere? I hope so. Those were the things on my mind, but when I got out of the van, I heard the faint noise of a piano being played. I instinctively raced into the warehouse. 5. At the sudden metallic sound of the warehouse door opening, I turned around in surprise. He was standing there in the doorway, shoulders heaving, staring at me. "You're back." "Yeah, sorry. I was just playing the piano because I felt like it." "That's fine." I thought he would be mad, but he just looked at me in a daze. I'm pretty sure it was out of tune." "Did you fix it?" "Oh? So that was why he was so surprised." I straightened up with a little pride. I may not look like much, but I'm a conservatory student. Not that my university exists anymore, but, that said, it was my first time tuning a piano, so it might still be a little off. "Still, I couldn't tune it at all," he said. "Testing out some keys. I hadn't played since the world ended up like this. I never imagined I would get to play again. Is it really worth being so grateful for? Does playing the piano now even mean much of anything? Playing piano is meaningless. I was just playing because I wanted to." I smirked ironically and laughed quietly in my nose. Suddenly, I felt I understood why he was living in this warehouse. He may have been denying it verbally, but I could tell he liked music. He knew the piano was out of tune because he was someone who played music. Would you like to play, too?" "I can't play piano." "You can play if you want," but then he went to sit in the corner. That must have been his usual spot. I ran my fingers along the keyboard in whatever ways came to mind. The chain of sounds became a song that spilled into the space. He had his eyes closed and seemed to be concentrating on the sound of the piano. "You must really like it, he suddenly said at a pause in the song. The piano. You seem to be having fun." Once he said it, I noticed my own feelings. Yeah. I guess piano is everything to me. Everything. My mother used to be a pianist. Dad is an unsuccessful composer. Memories from back when the world was still at peace. Nostalgic days I could never return to. When I was little, they made me practice piano all the time. They were obsessed with making me win the Chopin competition. They forced this dream onto me even though it was impossible. Stupid, right? So piano is all I have. It was horrible. There was a time when even the sight of a piano made me sick. After school was gone, and my house got caught in a terrorist attack, and I was left alone, I thought, well, at least I don't have to play piano anymore, yet here I am sitting at a piano again. It's so weird. In the end, I couldn't stay away. That must mean I really do love music. Sorry, I guess telling you my life story is kind of pointless. You can't forget it. No. He furrowed his brow at my facetious remark. He must have remembered what he said this morning. I felt like his expression was much softer than it had been in the morning. Maybe the music was breaking the ice. I took my fingers off the keys and turned to sit facing him. Why don't we play together? Then I'm sure you'll understand why music isn't pointless. But I said I can't play pia, not piano. This. I gestured at the guitar leaning against it. He looked at me in surprise. I felt like I had touched the real him for the first time. 6. She looked back and forth between me and the guitar, smiling. Why would? You're a guitarist? Right. This guitar is the only instrument here being maintained properly. No. Why would I play with you? We're both here, so I want to play together. Come on. It's the last day. Might as well. When she said it so bluntly like that, I couldn't for the life of me find an easy way to turn her down. I managed to say one thing. I don't know any classical songs. It doesn't have to be classical. I like jazz better than classical, actually. I couldn't ever play it when my mom was listening, though. I don't know any jazz, either. You can't just play whatever. Do you know pentatonic scales? No shit. I snapped because I felt like she was making fun of me and then immediately regretted it. Because if I had said no, maybe I could have gotten out of it. Then I'll say the chord. So just play something along the pentatonic and you'll do great? Fine. When I answered, she started playing the piano. Simple backing triads in 4/4. I'll start with C, G, E minor, F, she said. While I picked up the guitar, she continued tracing the same route. Our eyes met. She gave me a little nod. When I plucked a string with a worn-down pick, it rang out with a ping. Actually, the sound was so feeble it was almost completely drowned out by the grand piano, but the girl's expression still relaxed into a smile. In order to test me, to provoke me, she sped up. Now and then dropping out of sync on purpose, she continued to call out each chord in turn. It was like she was singing, and she swayed her body side to side. It seemed like she was having fun. I frantically moved my fingers according to what she said. She glanced over to check in on me. I nodded back at her. She pitched me a dramatic key change. Before I could even think about it, my fingers moved in reply. It was as if my nerves were only in my ears and fingers. The moment the sounds line up perfectly, I always feel like I'm part of an automatic music machine. It felt so comfortable and nostalgic. Are you crying? At some point she had stopped playing the piano, and I realized that I had tears falling down my face. Are you okay? Yeah. I was just remembering some things from a long time ago. From a long time ago? If you want, you can tell me. Or is it just more stuff that's pointless to talk about? She smiled at me kindly. When I saw that, I started to want, incredibly badly, for her to know me. I closed my eyes and reminisced about the good old days. Before the world ended up like this, I was a musician. I wasn't anyone fancy, just managed to keep food on the table. But I played as a duo with my best friend, him on keys and me on guitar. I thought so. When the declaration of the end came, work ran dry. Then one day he said we should go on a trip. He was saying this crap about how if the world was going to be like this, then he wanted to travel around Japan to give people something to dream about via music. That's wonderful, but actually we were just homeless. We drove around wherever we felt like and would stop for a roadside concert on a whim. There were almost never any people listening, but he seemed content with it. What's he doing now? He died. Probably, one day. We were doing a concert like usual and some thugs attacked us. Apparently there had been a little protest going on nearby. I grabbed this guitar and ran. I was desperate. I'm sure he must have gotten away, but we've been separated ever since. I couldn't find him no matter how hard I looked, so he must be gone. After that, I quit music. She closed her eyes, and I saw faint tears falling. If she can hear such a stupid story and be moved to tears by it, maybe it was worth it for him? Hey, tell me something. What the hell is the point of music? He died because of it, even though he was trying to use it to spread hope. No matter how you dress it up, he's dead. Music doesn't have the power to change the world. The idea of giving someone hopes or dreams with it is just a fantasy, don't you think? She looked straight at me, not averting her eyes in the slightest. Then she spoke slowly, as if confirming each word in turn and gathering her thoughts. I think you're right. Music doesn't have the power to change the world. Even Lenin singing about peace was powerless in the face of violence. Exactly. But music gives the person next to you listening a little push. It has the teeny kind of power. So if no one can hear it, then that's the same as nothing. But that's why we play. It might not reach anyone. It might not echo. But we can pray it will find someone, filled with pure belief in music. Her eyes didn't waver one bit. The light from the window shone on her, and she seemed to gleam. She was so dazzling I had to look away. Tomorrow, there won't be anyone left. But right now I'm here. And you're here. Isn't your friend's music still giving you that push? That's why you're here, right? You can't stay away from music. Her words permeated strangely deep into my chest, and I felt like my heart had grown lighter. And I finally realized I had been waiting all this time for him to come back. He never did return, but instead he brought her here. The backs of my eyes ached. I felt like I was going to cry again, so I looked down. Are you sure you're okay spending the last day of the world with this guy you never met? She laughed teasingly. In that case, it's a bit late, but why don't we introduce ourselves? My name's Konada, so you can call me that now. Tell me your name, too. It's not Oya. There. Now you're not some guy I never met. Alright, let's keep playing. It's the last day, so we can't let even a second go to waste. She, Konada, choked and created a resonant sound. I accompanied her in harmony. I'm not sure if the world will end tomorrow or not, but I hope it doesn't. It had been so long since I felt like that. If the world doesn't end tomorrow, want to go traveling with me? I wonder how she'd react if I asked her that. That's all I was thinking about as I strummed my guitar.